Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly stream about the Uno platform. My name is Jérôme Laban. I'm the CTO of the Uno platform open source project. And I spend about an hour every week on Tuesdays to take a look at issues and bugs and talking about news about the Uno platform and answer questions if there are any on Twitch and YouTube. This week we're going to take a look at a few issues. One being about resources and empty data. And the second one will be, or the first one will be WASM event binding or event binding when there's something that doesn't happen correctly when we're binding to data. And I want to start with one of the news that happened during the last week, which is the availability of Scotty. Scotty being the implementation of Lottie, the animation player that has been implemented by the Skia library. And there's now a binding to Scotty through Skia Sharp. And what that enables you to do is basically have the ability to, that's strong for me. I don't know, I'm probably not listening for this, but the idea is that you can have your animations shown up in your application, and it will gives you the ability to have cross-platform playback for this. And we're going to be implementing and adding the support for Scotty in all those targets through the animated visual player, and that will be available pretty soon. So now if we take a look at some code, there's actually a small piece of code that allows you to do this, and it's available here. Oh, and by the way, this would have not been possible through the help of Matthew Leibowitz, the maintainer of Skia Sharp, which has helped tremendously to get all this running properly. And the end result of all this is that we now have a public CI for Skia Sharp, which makes it a lot easier for us to, for anyone actually, to be able to contribute to Skia Sharp without having to bug Matthew when there's an error. Previously, the CI was private, and that was a problem to get to contribute to Skia Sharp. So now it's a lot easier. We're going to be making an additional contribution to Scotty, specifically to be able to do some manipulation of the data that's inside the Lottie animation. For instance, if you want to manipulate the colors or variables that are inside of the Lottie animation file. But still, in the current animation, you can just move back and forth and modify the content. And what we can see here is that because it's an open source contribution, it's also available for any Skia Sharp user. And this is someone from the Tizen Samsung framework team that tested this on it looks like a TV, I would guess. Yeah, it looks like a TV. And it was running. The animation was running on the TV, so that's pretty cool to see that that everything is available for everyone. You can check out the sample, and that sample is providing a few things, but it's actually a pretty easy one. You have to have a canvas in your application, so SK XAML canvas, and then on every change, you can do the upgrade. So let's take a look. You have you can load the file here, then provide it to a Skia stream, and then load the animation. And afterwards, when painting the surface, you can just do an animation.render on the canvas with the size of the animation or whichever side that you want. So this is something that's pretty low level in a sense, but it's something that we're going to be changing when integrated, well, not changing, but integrated into Uno using the animated visual player, which is the version from WinUI that allows to do Lottie playback. So stay tuned. It's going to be available soon. If I think Kyle is going to be taking care of this. I'm not sure yet, but that's going to be a fun one. So that's it. That's the Scotty sample. That's pretty big news, and it's going to unblock many things. Many things in the WinUI space because we didn't have support for it there on iOS, Android, and Linux. So now it's available on Linux as well. So there you go. Did I? I'm not even sure. I think I sent. Yeah, I did send. Okay, so I wasn't sure if I posted a tweet on the stream. Good. So there you go. Now let's take a look at the first issue that we have. Someone reported this. They are saying that if you have a view model and a view, if the view is named like the view model, there's going to be an exception that's going to happen, or compilation error that's going to try to do some weird thing. So let's try to get this running, and you can see here that it says that the binding doesn't work properly. So let's go and try this. So we have a file that we can download. So let's download that file, and let's go and try this. So we have that issue. Let's open this in Visual Studio. So later on, I think we're going to, if time permits, we'll see if we can fix those issues quickly. But if time permits, I think we're going to take a look at some Linux frame buffer issue. There were some people that were asking for some very specific feature. So we're going to see if we can troubleshoot those. So let's go take a look quickly. Oh, there you go. Visual Studio 73 Preview 2. It's available. It's been available in there. So if I had known, I probably would have updated my Visual Studio before the stream, because I like to live dangerously. But not for this time. So it's going to be for next week. Okay, so what do we have here? A small thing with Uno 438, and it's doing nothing specific. So it's a UWP app, nothing very complex, and we have some glop compile file and share project stuff. Nothing too fancy here. Okay, so we can open the solution and see what we have. Okay, so first, does it work on Windows? That's the first thing to try. So we can just guess if the application is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So if the solution has been created recently, we shouldn't be having the issue where the files are not found. That's good. So let's go for x64 and try to see what the app is doing. So we have a view model here. So we have one view here, which is called whatever. A page. So it looks like it's probably navigating to. Okay, so it's not even trying to get to those files. It's just they're just in the solution. So Windows is not having any problem with it, which is good. So we have a view model. It's called whatever. A view that's called whatever, and then there's a type here, which uses wasn't VM type. So it's using type namespace aliasing. And we got a view model here, and that should be good. Okay, so let's go and see what Uno does with it. Let's see, it's a net 5, so let's bump it to net 6 so we have the proper runtime compilation. Okay, so it says error found in grid. Okay, so it says that unable to find member VM in view model dot whatever. Okay, so it's probably because we're not resolving this type properly for some reason. We should be resolving this type, but for some reason we're trying to get to something else that's not related. So it could be because of this. let's try to see if it for some reason is related. Oh, the VM type is present multiple times, so we should be trying again. Okay, so it's the same. It's the same. It's trying to resolve the wrong type because the type of the view model is not the right one. So let's see if we name the view model. Is it working better? If I click on view model, whatever. Okay, so there's a good reason for this. It's probably because the type was not changed. Oh, I should have done a rename. Forgot about this one. Okay, so we can try again. Okay, so this time it works. Okay, so that would look like the fact that we're trying to resolve the type the wrong way, and that we're missing the type for some reason. So let's go into Uno, and let's try to figure what's happening. So I changed a few things recently in the past, I think in the past 2 weeks, so that the unit tests are building faster. Because they were using the Uno source generation tasks instead of using Roslyn now, or Roslyn directly at least. Now they are. So if we open, if we change the target framework override so that we only load everything that's related to unit tests, and then we can go to unit tests. So we're going to make a unit test specifically for this and try to find out if we can repro. So let's go find some tests for xbind. So that would be, is it an xbind or is it a binding? I think it is an xbind. It is an xbind. Okay, so let's create an xbind test that is specifically doing what we require. Okay. So let's see, maybe Visual Studio has improved since then. So if I create a file here, what happens? So if I create an Uno platform, oh, there's no, I thought there were user control. It just, I'm probably missing some user control here. Definitely missing user control. Oh, we have a bug. There you go. See? So the user control here should have been in Uno platform, but it is not in Uno platform. So it's probably some place somewhere else. It's not filtered. Why is it not there? Interesting. Okay, but anyways, let's create it. We're going to call it binding with the same class name, for instance. Yeah, so you can see it's still slow for some reason. So in that specific location where we're adding files from from Visual Studio, it takes a lot of time. And it fails here because it's not adding the file properly. So you can see the file is available here, but it's not, it's available on a disk, but it's not available. Yeah, it's not available right away from the other, from the IDE. So we could probably change that. So the file is not added, but it looks like there was a modification made somewhere. Let's see. So we have an automatic inclusion of XAML files in that file. Let's see if we have a change that shouldn't have been there. It's likely. Yeah, see, so the file was added as none here. So it makes it not applicable to the rest. So let's, yeah, Visual Studio, for some reason in that context, when you try to add files from the UI, it breaks in a very weird ways. So you can see here that it worked properly. So I'm going to call it binding same class name. Probably has not renamed everything else, but that's fine. Okay, so we have that control here, and we also have that control in the XAML. And we're just going to take the code that comes from the sample that was open already. So let's make it exactly the same. So we have unbinding class name, we have a VM on click. We're going to take the exact same code. And we're going to make the same view model so we can bind to the event here. But we're going to put it in a different namespace. So we're going to call it so I'm not going to be using the same base namespace, otherwise it would resolve differently. So I'm just going to be using this one for now, and we're going to see if we can repro the compilation failure in the same way. So this is failing for some good reason. So what we need to do is do the same thing that was there, which is using the same alias, just to make sure that we're doing the same resolution. So our type will be control bindings dot whatever. There you go. That's good. So we have a user, we're missing a few namespaces. It's probably because it was the wrong type. But anyways, okay. So it's Windows controls. The type that we need is VM type here. And so that's the same type here, VM type. And the associated class is the binding same class name that we need to manipulate. Okay. So hopefully, so we don't need anything here. We could probably just do some manipulations afterwards. So let's try to build this test and see if we can get a valid compilation. So since the change, now the most of the time is spent in VBCS compiler. You can see that we've already reached Uno UI now. And it's going to be a bit faster now to get to the next parts. So you can see that it's going through CSC and it's done already. So it's actually a lot faster than it was when using Uno source generation. And it's something that is now enabled by default when you're using .NET 6 or .NET 7 if you're on the edge. And for us, for developing Uno, it makes it a lot faster. And for streams, it's a lot better because we don't have to wait. Okay, so it does not fail. That is very interesting. It does not fail, and that would mean that... so Mike is asking, no more killing of the MS build processes, or do you still need to do that sometimes? It shouldn't happen anymore. But it depends on the scenarios that you're getting into. So maybe, I don't know, let's say in some cases, maybe there are some tasks that are locked up by MS build processes. It happens. But in general, no, you shouldn't be having to kill MS build processes. I mean, that is unless you're doing the bootstrapper development directly. So in that case, you may have that issue. But no, in general, no. Hey, McNets, thanks for joining. So it does not fail. So if it does not fail, that means that we have another issue. We're not we're not reproducing exactly the same issue there. So why? Why would that not fail? So maybe, so we have event binding bug. We have event binding view model here. It's because the type of the class is not the same. Okay, so we need to change. That's what happens. It does not happen. So we need to do binding same class name here for the view model. Otherwise, it won't work. So it should be changing it at the top. There you go. So will it fail this time? I would guess it will. No, still doesn't fail. So we have the same class name for the view model. That's very interesting. Okay, so we're not getting the same issue. So the VM type is here, it's the right one. Or maybe it's something that we fixed in the latest Uno. That could be. Let's see. Let's upgrade to the latest Uno. Just in case. If Uno wants to answer, there you go. The UnoGet wants to answer, sorry. Okay, so let's upgrade all of those packages. Set, and let's rebuild and see if we have something different this time. Because it may have been fixed. If it's fixed, that would be nice, but no, it doesn't look like it was. Okay, so it's still failing because it still tries to do some binding at the top. So are we missing something in the binding here? So the local is the right one. VM is binding to the right type. Is it because they both have the same base? Maybe not. That's curious. It's very curious. Because we should have been able to reproduce it because the types are the same. So we have the name of the class that's the same. The base is the same. The namespaces that lead to the type are the same. Okay, so looks like it's different. So we're going to try to find something else. So let's try to debug directly into the app because obviously in this case we are not able to find something that makes sense. So to do this, we need to go in there and change the override. And we're going to change the override to the same value as the one that's in the app, which is 44245. And then we can go back to our unit test filter. And we're going to build a new version of the generators so that we can debug them and see why we're not getting to the right location. Okay, so as we overrode the version, we can go to our WASM project, and we're going to be adding a new property in the project so that it starts the debugger. So to start the debugger, we can go into the generation here, and we have well, not that one. I think it's in here. Let me find it. No, not that one. So we have the generation context, probably in this one. Ah, there you go. So we have an Uno UI source generator debugger break. So if you take that property and put it into your project, set it to true when you're building, what will happen is that Visual Studio is going to pop up and say, where do you want to debug this? So we're going to want to debug this into the solution that we opened previously. And we're going to go try to find out where we're getting an exception. So let's go and hook onto all the exceptions and see where we're not getting anything that makes sense. Okay, so there we are. It says that the current type is the view model, and that current types comes from parts.0, and we're rewriting the namespaces for parts.0. Parts.0 is called VM, so my guess would be, so it's not a static target, so type is not the right one. So current type is defined by source type, and source type is defined by the parent. So let's go to the parent. And the source type is defined by class name, and we're using class name as the type at the top. So the reason that would fail is because the class name there is not fully qualified. And that's pretty bad. Now, what I don't know is why doesn't it fail on the other solution? And I would guess it's because of the ordering of types inside of whichever backend provides the types. So we're trying to resolve as much as we can, and because they're not qualified completely, then it will do that kind of things. So this is our issue, and we can't reproduce it. We cannot reproduce it easily inside of Uno, but maybe let's see if we do something like this. So if we go back to our test and we do this, does it fail? So, test based on ordering is pretty bad. It's not supposed to happen, but still is something that we're gonna have to figure out. But this is a hunch, so let's figure out if there's going to be something that makes sense. So obviously we're resolving a type using its name, so not the fully qualified version of it. So that means that it's going to be failing to resolve if there are multiple types that are under the same name. So we're going to have to adjust that lookup to use the right type. So let's see, does it fail this time? No, it still doesn't fail. Okay, so it's not, the ordering doesn't change anything, but that's fine. So what we're going to do is change how the generator looks up the types. So in here, this means that the find type that we're doing here is not the right one. And we should be composing the class name as being the full class name and not just the namespace plus the class name, not just the class name decomposed. I thought we had a version of this that was fully defined, but definitely it's not how we're doing it. So let's go at locations where we're using this and see if we're building this the wrong way. So we have class name, and we're building it from there. And we're using class name as a, in multiple locations, but we're not building it completely. So we should be composing it to get the proper value. But you can see here, there are other locations where we're doing it wrong. So for instance, in there, we're using the class name and it's not the fully qualified name, fully qualified type. So I would guess that we probably will need to replace all of those by an actual type and avoid resolving all this because it doesn't make sense. And yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it in many occasions. So we got the class name. So what I don't know is, can we do a get type for this? It may not be that you can define a class defined as X class, but maybe the type doesn't exist. So that could happen. But for XBind, we have to have the type that's available. So the type has to be defined so that we can do some definitions on, so some bindings on it. And it may not be available always. That's very interesting. So there may be some scenarios that don't work properly because we're not defining the right values at the right time, but no. So maybe we should be, so we got to get class name here. I don't think we're resolving the type anywhere. So let's go and do that resolution. Let's go and create a class type. I'm going to do a find type with the class name. So I would have thought that we were returning something that was, or maybe we could put it as the class name completely and resolve it from there. Yeah, we're splitting it here already. So to avoid recomposing it, we're just going to return the iType symbol from there completely. So it will be the symbol, but it may not be found. That could happen. So we're going to be changing so that we're returning just parts of it. So let's go and do find. So this is not a static one. Find symbol, find type, using the full name. And yeah, that's going to be the right one. Storing it here as a symbol. Probably should be replacing this with a record. Probably going to be doing this. Yeah, let's do this. We're going to be replacing this by a record. So I'm going to put this at the top. It doesn't need to be a tuple because there's starting to be too much content there. Okay, so we have the class name here, and we're setting it to that class name. Okay, so that then we can make a record. Let's call it class name, and it has to have those members. Is external and it is not defined. So we're probably going to have to make a few changes to get there, because that standard 2 does not provide this this feature. So we're going to have to find is external in it. So this file we have available here, but we can integrate that as a helper inside Uno generators. So let's put it in helper as a linked file. There you go. Okay, so we have a class name. So we should be able to change all the allocations where we're using this. So instead of returning this tuple and this tuple, we can use the class name directly. And we cannot have nullable for this type. So we're going to have to change this here. Or we could return null to the class name. That could work as well, but Let's see if we have compilation errors in other locations. Okay, so in here we have class name. Class name may be null because we are setting it as nullable, possibly. But here what we need is the type symbol. So the symbol. And no need to do a find type because we have it. But we don't know if we have a symbol, so it may not be valid. So we have to fail the right way. So for now, we're going to throw an exception, but we're going to have to do it differently in the future. Class name symbol. So it has to be a named type symbol. So we're going to be doing the same here. So it has to be a named type symbol. Okay. And we're unable to find the type class name dot namespace and the class name dot class, is it class name? Okay. So there you go. We have found, so we have the symbol now that we can resolve and use properly. What do we have here? We have a few additional errors. So this may fail because the class name may be null. Something. So it looks like we did some tricks with tuples, and it kind of broke the nullability validations. So what we're going to do is change the fact that the class name may not be null, because when we do get class name, it cannot be null. But we're going to change this here. So class name here can return null. And we're going to say that if class member is null, then we return, we raise an exception, which is fine. But in here, we're just going to be returning a null because we didn't find any class value that makes sense. The find type may still be null though. So this one is valid. So in other locations, we have class name. So I'm going to say if we have a class name, then we can write the partial. That is fine. And we have class name must contain a non-null value. And we're not initializing it properly, of course. And we defined it, don't know where it is. So class name has to be nullable because we're doing nullable checking there, and it works. Okay, so let's see if we have other locations where we're doing uses of class name. Oh, in that context, we're not, of course. Okay, so there are many locations where we're using class name with nullable features. Okay, so class name here. So that's interesting because we're assigning it to null, to non-null, but we're still validating that it, yeah, it's not a, oh, class name can be null. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that's where we're missing it. Okay, so only the type symbol can be null, and that's much better. So class name here could be null. So that's the first location where we may have an issue. And here, okay, so if class name is not null, then we have another type of validation to make. Okay, so let's do it this way for now to see if if we're not getting under additional issues. So if we have a class name here as well, that works. And that's a lot of locations where the nullability is hitting us now, because in some of the cases, a class name was not what could be could not have. You could have some null values because it was supposed to be nullable, but for some reason it did not propagate properly to the rest of the file. So now we have to make sure that we're validating all the paths so that we don't null ref in the wrong locations. Okay, so in here, so hex bind has to be available. So if let's make a validation. So if we do, so we could make another method that says that class name is not available, is not null. But the problem is that we are in that context, because we're in net standard 2, we don't have the proper attributes to do that. So for now, we're just going to be doing something like this. So class name. No. Okay, so we need to find an X bind here. So we're gonna have to do it in this one as well. We have to do it here as well. So maybe we'll see if we can add the type that allows us to do this type of changes. So we have a class name here as well. I thought I defined it here. Okay, so define inline event. And the last one is, so we're manipulating xbind, and in differ load strategy, we're expecting that class name has to be available, but it may not be the right validation. We're gonna have to do it with visibility markup, unless, yeah, it's probably too large to do it on the full method, where we actually need it for a smaller scope. So that's validated here. So actually, let's take a look at, because it sucks that we have to be repeating all this. So let's see if we do a method that's called ensure x class defined. So if we wanted to be able to do something like this, there's an attribute that you can set for nullable reference types, and there's a way to mark with attributes to say that the returning type is the right one, but I don't recall where that one is. It's probably, so there's a type annotation. There's an attribute. Where did I miss it? Attributes that annotate. So member not null attribute. That's not the one we want. So not null when. Member not null when. I don't remember which one is the one that we want. Member not null when attribute. Does any one of you know about the attribute that does not return if? I could be that one. Does not return if something. Okay, so does not return if attribute. So let's see. We have does not return null if attribute. Okay, so fail fast is does not return if true, but that's not what we want. That would be another one. Does not return fail fast. That's not what we need. Member not null when. Not null if not null. That's not the one we want. Ha. I'm not sure which one that would be. So member not null when. So that could be close. Get not null if not null. Not null when true. Not null when false. That's not the one we want. Throw when not null. Okay, so I don't know which one that is. We're going to try to figure this one out later. But in that case, because we added that method, then it doesn't work because it has to figure out which type is available. So we're going to have to change this later. Okay, so that should be enough. But that's the idea. So you can see that we found out that there's some piece that doesn't work because we're trying to use the class name explicitly without typing, without providing the complete type, and that's a problem. So with that change, it should be better. So we need that validation again at the top. And likely here as well. Okay, so if we do a compilation of the source generator, if we didn't break anything else, that should be enough so that we can rebuild the application on the other side. And removing the debugger break that we added previously. There you go. It builds now. That's good. So now we have the right code generated, and it goes to the right view model. So we're resolving the right type and not just by its name. We're using the fully qualified name, and that works better. Good. Okay, so that's for the first issue. I'll finalize it off stream. It's gonna be better to find out the other parts not particularly useful in that context. Okay, the second issue is this one, and I see the time. Probably going to take a look at the Linux issue first. Let's see. So do you have a preference? Do you want to take a look at this one, or do you want to take a look at the Linux one? It's your choice. If someone has an input. So this one is, this specific issue is all about having empty values, and when a value is empty, it should be returning null. But in our case, it does not return null. So we should be changing this to have the right value. So we can take a look quickly at this one. it's probably relatively easy. So if we search for resource loader, in our resource loader, we're parsing all the files to get the resources from the process assembly here, processing resource file, and we're doing read string to get the individual values that are coming from the resources. And we're doing key value, and when the value is whichever it is, it does not return the right content. So if the value is empty, probably should be returning null and not an empty string. So probably just the behavior to manipulate here. So we probably should be changing this 291 line here to change for if is null or empty, we'll return null or value. What does it say? There you go. So that would be the fix for this one, just making sure that we're using the right type. Okay, so that's the first one, for the second one. So now let's go take a look at some Linux. So what we should be doing here is take a look at this one. So I have a small VM here, but what we're going to do is just connect to that machine through Visual Studio Code. It doesn't matter if we can't read the content here; it's not particularly important. But what we will be doing is connect it to that Visual Studio. I think I do have it here. No, I don't have the extension. So let's go and install the extension. So it's called Remote SSH, if I remember correctly. Remote SSH. There you go. So I'm going to be connecting to my machine here. And it's called that should be enough. So we can try to connect to that one. See if it works. It does. I'm not sure if the $sign is supposed to be there, but no, it's not supposed to be there. So let's edit the SSH configuration file. I probably typed something incorrect there. No, it's the right location. So let's try again. Linux. Okay, so it's setting up. There you go. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build on that VM specifically. We're going to build Uno directly. So to do this, we're going to be cloning Uno. So let's do this right now. So do I have Git? We do have Git. And it's going to be this. There you have it. Let me clean everything up. Okay. So we have Uno cloned. Let's open that folder. So it's easier to view. Okay, so what we want is to run a sample app. I think I do have a sample app for frame buffer. There you go. So that's that one here. And I want to run that application for the frame buffer directly onto this specific VM here. So let's see if we can get to do I have .NET installed already? So I'm not sure if I do have this. No, that's not here. So we're going to be installing .NET on that machine. It's not a brand new machine, but it's not used that much. So we're going to be doing that change directly. So .NET install Ubuntu. It's a 2004. So we need we need those commands to set up the no. Okay, so we're set up here. We have some C#. We could probably install the extension here. That would help for there. So we have installed some setup, and then we're going to be installing .NET 6. Should be quite fast. It says ASP.NET targeting pack. Well, that's new. The following have unmet conditions. Did I miss something? No. You may have broken problems. Okay, so this is very new. I think they released a security fix today, and it looks like they're not done with all the installation. That's a problem. Okay, so what we're going to do is just use the scripts and run it manually. There's a .NET install here that we're going to use. It's going to be easier. So .NET shell. And we can do .NET install. So it's going to download .NET. It's probably going to place it at the right location. So it's using 3.01. So that's a new version that was out today. It's probably because of that it fails for some reason. Okay, so I have to source it to be able to use .NET here. Oh, I can't do it that way. So otherwise so if I use .NET here, it's probably not going to work. See, it doesn't work. So I have to source the shell, this shell script. So let's make it executable and source just .NET install here. I'll close my shell. Oh, we're probably going to be having to do something about this. That's I think I saw that one previously. Otherwise, I'm going to be modifying the path manually. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, it's still not there. Okay, so the .NET is in the path, so I'm going to be changing the path for this particular terminal. That's going to be good enough. And I think it's in .NET. Oh, doesn't give me the path. So .NET and just .NET actually. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to be changing my path again. And I should be having .NET this time. There you go. Okay. 6.03.01. So it fails today because of the release of 3.01 that was not there before. So probably they have not published the whole thing for Ubuntu, but that's fine. Okay, so now we are there. So let's go to our path here, which is the SKU frame buffer. I don't know if that works in this case. No, it doesn't work. Can I copy? No, it still doesn't work. Okay. So I have to go to src samples app Skia. Linux frame buffer. There you go. So we should be able to do a .NET run. Oh, and I forgot about something. So we may need to specialize the build so we're not building too much. So in this case, we need to use the specific target that the specific property that we have defined in this file. So it's called Uno target override. And we're going to be using net standard 2 so that we don't build too much. Let's do just a .NET build and not just .NET run, because .NET run doesn't provide enough information. It's an equal, not a column. Okay, so it's going to be downloading a few things. Building projects. Well, I don't have any location here. I don't have any NuGet packages downloaded on that machine, so it's probably going to take a few seconds to download everything, but it should be building fast. So it's that VM is quite fast. Let's build a remote control server. I like that extension, the fact that we can connect to any Linux, macOS, and actually Windows machine remotely without having to, SSHs and do it. And the feature that I like the most is the fact that we can download stuff from the tree here. So you can download the file, but you can also push. So it's pretty much an SCP, but inside of Visual Studio Code. And so you don't have to install anything, just have SSH available on the target machine or environment, and makes it easier to work from any machine to another machine without having to install anything. It's pretty nice. So it's still resolving. So other things that we want to try. So the issue that's at hand. Let's make our Visual Studio bigger. Is the fact that when we're running the Skia frame buffer, we're assuming that the frame buffer is going to be 32 bits. And on some devices, I don't know which ones, but some devices, it's from the original issues, it said that a Raspberry Pi could be a device that is not supporting 32 bits for some reason. I'm not too sure, but maybe an older version of it. Does it work with Mignitz is asking, does it work with a Raspberry Pi? And yes, it does. It does with a Raspberry Pi. You can connect to pretty much anything. It doesn't need to have an actual. It doesn't need to have any display or anything. You can connect to anything. Can be a container if you want. It works pretty well. So we're trying to connect to. We're trying to render to a frame buffer that may not be 32 bits. And the way we're setting this up is by using the, let me find that. We have the display, so the new renderer. And we have a frame buffer device here. And that frame buffer device is initialized from there. And we're doing a few things like set 32 bits pixel format. And we're forcing that pixel format to be 32 bits. And it may not work properly. That's actually what's happening. It's not working properly. So what we may want to do is to change this to be different. The build is failing because it's missing mono. So we're going to have to install mono manually again. We have a dependency inside of Uno that requires mono. It's not needed from the outside, but for building .NET, for building Uno itself, it needs mono to run. It's not something that we could change because we're taking a dependency on a T4 renderer that, for last time I checked, was not updated to .NET 5 or more. So we still have to use mono. So let's go and download mono for Linux. So we need to install mono. Let's open a new terminal. there it is. And then we need to install mono afterwards using mono devel. Should not be too long, hopefully. Now the mirror is quite fast, so that's fine. So what we should be needing to change is the fact that the bits per pixel here are 32 bits by default. And we should be falling back to a 16 bits per pixel format for the colors. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is to set the format. So we're trying to set the pixel format to 16 bits, 32 bits. And if it fails, we just bail out. And what we could do here is set a 16 bits and try to see if we can get something to work properly. The only thing is that we may have to change some assumptions because we're multiplying by 4 every pixel that we're manipulating, or the rendering the pixel that we're manipulating, and we also need to change the way. We also need to change the way Skia is going to be rendering its content because it also assumes that it's a 32 bits by default. So let's try to build .uno again. Let's make another method here. Let's call it 16 bits. So an exception was thrown. Running transformation code. Mono failed. I wonder if it's a path issue. That could be. So we're going to be making another terminal. Just we need to do the export again. And we need to go to the same home path. And we need to build again with the command that we had before. And let's see if mono is behaving a bit better this time. No, still not working. Oh, okay, so this one is different. So it says namespace cannot access members such as field, methods, or statements. Okay, so this is probably because we have files that are already built, and that should not be here. So let's do a git clean at dx so that we have the right files, even if it rebuilds a bit too much when we do it again. Okay, so let's try again. So we need a 16 bits per pixel. So it's going to be a 565 because that's the for the format. So let's go to 556. So 5 pixel for red, 5 bits for red, 5 bits for blue, and 6 bits for green. And transparency is going to be 0 because there's no transparency in that context. And there's a green offset, and in that context, the green offset is going to be which one would that be? I would guess that would be 6. This is 5. Let's go with 5 for now. And the blue offset is going to be 11, I would guess. And transparency offset is going to be 0, probably. So transformation failed again. So why does it fail? It says could not load type compiler bridge. Mono T4 generator doesn't work. So that's interesting because we're building on Linux for other parts of the build, but for some reason this one is not working. We can actually go take a look and see if there's an update for the packages that we're using here for the build. Because maybe there's, now that they're pushing a lot .NET, maybe there's a new version of those that are running using, that are compatible with .NET. So .NET 6. So the one we want to get to would be the T4 generator. It's called T4 generator here. And the package that we're looking at is the Microsoft Visual Studio text templating. Maybe there's another version of this one. Who knows? There's a 17.2 version of it. Is there a, so no, it's net 4.7.2 only, so not going to help much. But maybe it's compatible with the next version, so we could probably try and upgrade to it still. So we're using the 15 version, but if it still doesn't work, we're going to be changing gear and do something different. So we're looking at the version here. It's a 17.2 something pretty large. So let's remove this one and see if it builds better. So if it still does not work, what we're going to do is not build everything. Package downgrade, telemetry. That one is a dependency, so probably don't need it. So we're going to make an application on the side, and we're just going to build the parts that we need for the rest to work. But I'm not completely sure if we're going to be able to do this. But let's see. Still having the problem with the dependencies. So let's do git clean again. So does the T4 generator work if it's been updated to a later version? Let's hope so, but not too sure yet. Okay, so building dispatching. So it's going to start doing the T4 generation when getting to Uno UI. But it's pretty interesting because it is working, because we're making some builds on Linux specifically. And it means that we're having something else that breaks. Or maybe we're supposed to be adding that assembly somewhere. Maybe there's a dependency that we're missing. No, compiler bridge doesn't exist. Text templating. Let's see. Do we have that library somewhere? So it's only text templating. That's pretty, that's very, very interesting. So let's see if we have something that Google can tell us. Big mess for, okay, so not particularly useful. So that would look like a mix-up in DLLs, because it's looking for a version of that type that doesn't exist, but it's not available somewhere. What we could try is try to run this using .NET. Maybe that could help. Okay, so it's not built for .NET. So we could probably just try this. So let's try to make a version of this that uses .NET 6 instead. .NET 6. Let's see if we get something that's interesting. Copy path, and let's go to that folder. Oh, I still have to. Still have to set the path because it's not installed completely. So it says that the NuGet package is not from the right target, but that's fine. For now, at least, we can just ignore the message and see how far we go. No warn. The last time I tried it, it failed for other reasons, so maybe it's not going to work, but you know, we still have to try. Okay, so it fails for another reason. Oh, there's app domains. There are app domains there, so yeah, if there are app domains, it's likely going to fail. But you know, let's try anyways. Oh, what do you know? It starts. Okay. So let's see if we give it the path to what we had there. So we had the template file and the mix-in path. Maybe it'll do something. Ah, there you go. Okay, so it's trying to do some remoting for some reason, and that is the part where it fails. Okay, so we're not going to get anything working with all this. Okay, so that's a problem. Because we're not able to build completely on Linux, and it should be working. So it looks like we're missing another dependency. So maybe it got updated to the wrong version or incorrect version. Maybe you can make an update for this package specifically. Maybe there's a newer version of it. So we're using 16.3. Okay, so it's a pretty old version. Okay, so we can maybe have an updated for this one. Let's try again. And that may be one of the drivers that could push us to make the upgrade and you know, remove the T4 templating altogether, because it's not working on Linux. Or maybe there's another package that I haven't seen. So I took a look quickly before, but maybe there's another one that I missed. So we have text templating here, but this one is not the right one. We have text templating VS host. There's an unofficial text templating. Well, that was for VS 2015. That's pretty old. Okay, so that's not going to help us. There's a VS host, but that one is probably not useful either. Okay, so which error did we get this time? Yeah, still the same. Because it feels like it's saying that the type is not the right one. Kind of like we're referencing content that's not supposed to be there somehow. Let's go take a look at that assembly. See what we have in there. So it says enable tool compiler bridge from that specific version, so 15. Text templating. Let's download this file and take a look inside. What do we have? So it's searching for a file that is called compiler bridge in text templating. The compiler bridge is here, but maybe they have dependencies that are not compatible. So yeah, they're depending on Microsoft Code Analysis, but maybe we're upgrading to a version that that has some of the wrong dependencies. So if we take a look at the package itself, so we're depending on the 15 version. So does it pull? Does it pull? No, it doesn't. It doesn't pull Roslyn. So the version of Roslyn that we have here has been integrated by ourselves, I would guess. So it's Code Analysis 3.3.1, and maybe there's a problem with the version that we're using. Ah, so 3.10. Okay, so that could explain. So okay, let's bump it up. I don't know if there's a 3.10 though. So let's go figure if there's a 3.10 that exists. I would guess there is, but is there a 3.10? There's a 3.10. Okay, so let's go and bump to 3.10 and see if that helps us. And we're going to revert. So it was reverted. That's good. And we can do, we can just do a git clean and try again. That's one of the interesting packages because it defines a dependency on, it uses dependency on Roslyn, but the package itself, so Microsoft Visual Studio Text Templating, does not contain that dependency, so it breaks for other reasons. Yeah, so it still fails to load the file. That's annoying. It fails for the same reason, so it's still not finding the right files at the right location. And if I run the project manually, no such file or directory. Yeah, it fails the same way. Maybe if I go to the folder itself, because it could be a problem for the resolution itself. Sometimes it's just the file that are not at the right location, but no, it doesn't work. Okay, so there's definitely something that doesn't work. So what could we do? We could bypass this by copying some files that are used by the compiler. So let's do this for now. It's going to make it easier. So there's a set of files that are in the mixin folder, and we can basically take the whole folder and just drop it on the other side so that the compiler doesn't run completely. So let's do this. I'm going to take the mixins folder and drop it in there. Say that we want to replace everything. It's likely going to want to say that nothing changed, which is fine. And this time the build should be working better, I would guess, because it's not going to try to build the missing files, if all goes well. still trying to. So it says the mixins dependency properties mixins.g.cs is not good. Let's see. Error generating output. I could probably skip the step that does the mixin generation altogether. So let's do this. So in that folder, we have a file somewhere. We have mixin generation somewhere. Let me find it out. We get the mixin generation targets, which is here, and there's a step at the end that runs the generation. And we're going to be just skipping the generation of the mixins completely. So this one. Because the files are the right ones, because I copied them from a machine that actually builds it properly. But still, so it's not complaining anymore, which is fine because the generated files are there. I wonder if there's an open source T4 generation engine. Maybe there was one from the Mono team. Does any of the listeners know about a T4 transformation? Oh, there's one here. Oh, that's interesting. So that's a T4 for .NET. Okay, so that may be one of the. It's Emma Chinson's that has done that package. That's nice. Probably gonna be taking a dependency on this one because it's probably gonna be working fine. Oh, that's very good. Let's see. I go to the root. So how does it work? Oh, it's the mono runtime version of .NET. So that's nice. Okay, so it's called just T4. Well, there you go. That's pretty easy. All right, so it's in .NET, so we have to find it there. Okay, so it needs lib a host xfr. Probably not installed properly. I would have thought that we set it properly, but yeah, probably we're missing something there. .NET T4, .NET root. Okay, so it's an older version of it, so it depends on the .NET Core 3.1. So we may have to install .NET Core 3.1 to get there. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so it's still building. That's good. So we got past many of the issues there. I wonder if there's a newer version of this one. .NET tool install. Is there a version of it that has there's source link? Yeah, it's .NET Core 3.1. So it doesn't. So it does roll forward latest major. So that should be enough. But maybe there's another dependency that's there that causes some issues. But anyways, okay. So there we go. So we have a build. That's good. So now we should be able to do .NET Run instead, and have something that shows up on the the frame buffer. It's still building a bit, but we should be good at the end. Yeah, still building. I don't know if that machine has enough CPU though. It looks like it only has yeah, there's only one virtual processor. That's probably why it takes a bit of time to build. Oh, that's fine. Probably should be having this changed for the next time we're doing some Linux stuff. So in the meantime, try to figure out why we need that version of .NET upgraded. I wonder if it's because it's using a version of the Bootstrap here that's is there .store .NET T4 tools. Let's say if I run this tool directly, what happens? It runs. Okay, so it's just it's the stub that's been installed that requires a dependency on .NET Core 3.1. But if I run the project directly this way, it will not cause issues. So probably gonna make a PR on this one that upgrades to .NET 6, because otherwise the tooling is gonna be missing. And it's gonna be annoying. But that would be a good replacement for getting us there, because not being able to build on Linux latest versions of Linux for some reason, because we have our CI that runs on Linux, but not in that context. So I hope I'm going to be able to show you something that runs in the frame buffer, but looks like because I only will have one CPU there, it's a bit longer than I expected. So the next time we're going to be trying with a sample application on the side without having to rebuild everything that comes from Uno. It's not needed, but it's just for the exercise of showing that everything should be working. And we found that T4 is a problem, so we're going to have to make a version of that runs properly with .NET 6. Okay, so we're getting to the application. As I saw the head being built, we're getting there. So it's likely I'm not going to be able to touch anything there, but who knows? Maybe a lib input's going to work on the VM directly, but at least it may show something up. It still takes a while. It's definitely not particularly useful in that case. So note for later, if you have a machine that only has one CPU, .NET, it works, but it takes a while. So what we can do next is just make a second application and use the overrides. So if we go to that file, we can set the Uno NuGet version override so that it uses one version of .NET, one version of Uno, and puts it into the NuGet cache, so that your application can use that particular version without having to build the full Uno target. Okay, so we're getting to lib input, close to the end. should have done a .NET build -- no build. There's an option to avoid when you're doing a .NET run without having to rebuild the whole chain before. But in this case, we had that anyways. Come on. Just again, I have Node that runs for some reason. Not sure why, but you know, it's not taking too much of CPU, but hey. Okay, so it's still building some other part of the app. Oh yeah, it's building the final head. So we're getting to there. So on the other sides, where we're building that part, the 16-bit pixel format, there's the render itself. So when we're setting up the surfaces for the rendering, and we can see here that we're using the pixel format for a frame buffer, the frame buffer device. And I think we're generating that from the offset. So we should be changing this to be using the offset as well as the number of pixels. So we're determining if we should be using RGBA 8888 for the format, or use another smaller version of it that uses 565. And we're going to be changing this part so that we align to the right target. And actually, I'm not going to be overloading the machine that is building. So if we open Uno again, and if we go to our Skia target. Okay, so I have to have to specify the framework. So let's see what the commands are for .NET Run. So I'll have to rebuild everything. Help. I have to set no build. Okay, so -- no build. And for this one, it's going to be no build and framework. And the application that we want to run is for the target net5. So is it good enough? Okay. So it says fail to open frame buffer. So it's probably because I'm not running as root. So let's do this. Okay, so the other part is where if you're doing this, yeah, so I need to redo. So that's one of the things. If the application fails for some reason, then you may lose the keyboard. Well, you may lose the feedback. So I'm just going to be opening another one because I don't remember the commands to reset the terminal. There's certainly one. It's not clear. It's another one. But let's do this for now. So that's the one, and we still need our export, and we also need to have our .NET Run. So probably should be able to run. Let's go in the folder directly. Net5. Just going to run the app from here, so it doesn't bother us too much. Samples at Skia Linux frame buffer.dll, and if I don't run, there you go. Samples app Linux frame buffer. Oh, of course, it doesn't find .NET because I forgot something. Did I forget something? Oh, it's because the path is yeah, I have to do. Okay, so I have to go to that path specifically again as root, but because it's not installed completely, it's not going to work. So the root is not the right one. There you go. And I'm going to start the app again. Still doesn't find .NET for some reason. Because the path is not the right one again. Okay, much better. And we do have some content. So it took a bit of time, but it's there. So we have the application running. I don't think we have the pointer working. Yeah, the pointers are not working. The keyboard doesn't either. But anyways, the point is that we can run using the frame buffer, so that's good. So that was the first step, and then we need to fix the pixel format, but that's going to be for another time. And I hope it was educational for some of the things that I've shown you today. We fixed a bug with the code generation, and we took also the time to try to build Uno on Linux. And there are a few things that changed, and since we did the installation, or either from Mono or from other dependencies, and we found out that we need to fix the T4 template build because it's missing .NET. So, and there's a new package that does that, and so now we know that we can build and run and get to a point where we have our frame buffer showing something, which is good, but that we don't have the change for making the T4, 16 bits available at that location. So we're going to be making that change next time. So I hope you had fun, and until next week, happy coding. See you next time. Bye for now.